only 3 goals happened today, and there was 3 games that has happened today, and all of them ended 1-0. And we also had the first 3 teams today that has been officially eliminated in the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia, and those teams are Saudi Arabia, Morocco, and also Egypt. And what that means is that with Saudi Arabia now eliminated and Egypt eliminated, it means that Group A is the first group in the whole tournament out of the other 7 group that is already set for the knockout stage. Russia and Uruguay is now moving on into the next round, and the next match between both of those teams will determine who will actually finish top, or potentially if that game ends in a draw, then Russia will actually finish top of the group in Group A. I mean, let that sink in. Russia finished top of their own group despite all the talks of how unstable that their team was coming into this tournament. And in some way, I know I've been saying this a couple of times, but I'm going to say it again. I am so happy that when I was doing the Group A prediction, that I picked Russia and Uruguay to move on instead of Uruguay and Egypt to move on. But yeah, either way, let's talk about these 3 games. And, I talked about how in the preview that maybe one of these games there's going to be a big upset because of how this tournament is and how crazy it's been since we have been having so many upset. But unfortunately today we didn't have any of that. We almost did, to be fair. And this one probably should have been an upset. Morocco lost this one to Portugal 1-0. The only goal came in the 4th minute by Ronaldo. And really, Morocco, the guy that I told you that you have to mark and you have to look out for every single time, and you literally just lost your marker and you literally just have a lapse of concentration right in the 4th minute, and that Ronaldo just beat you like that. I mean, that couldn't be a bad start for Morocco if you would have seen that. But to the credit of Morocco, they did fought back in this game, and in many ways, after the goal by Ronaldo, they pretty much just, and this is Morocco that I'm talking about, pretty much just dominate throughout the whole game. Portugal just could not really get anything going up front, and even though at times when they did try to get something going and that they did had a couple of opportunity to make it 2 or 3-0, that is Portugal, Morocco looked like they were going to get a goal. And this is probably the thing that is going to be a very deep regret for Morocco, and I think this is probably something that they're going to have to need to think about it and need to fix for the next time when they are in the World Cup, is that they need to have a guy on their team that can basically put those balls into the back of the net. I mean, I've been saying about how when I make my prediction of this Group B, I thought, if Morocco was going to really challenge these 2 teams, they need to potentially have someone that can be a clinical kind of striker and could be the goal scorer for them. And so far in this tournament, nobody in that Morocco team does. And despite the fact that throughout these first 2 games, and the 2 games that really defied their faith of them getting eliminated in the World Cup, is that they've been pretty dominant going forward. They've been creating a lot of dangerous chances against their opponent, but the biggest problem for this team is that they just cannot finish off those chances, and sometimes when they have those big opportunity, the final ball is just not good enough, and it was the same case throughout this whole game. So as much as I feel like Morocco don't deserve to get eliminated, and that I feel like saying that Morocco is the first team to be eliminated in the World Cup this year is a little bit kind of harsh. As the old saying is, and as the old cliche says, it doesn't matter how many chances and how many kind of decent kind of chances you create on the attack. If you do not put the ball into the back of the net, all those chances will just be like a waste, and that it doesn't really matter whatsoever. So definitely that's something that Morocco need to understand next time, and maybe in the next game when they face against Spain, which I'm pretty sure they're not going to have those kind of same good looks like they did against Portugal. Maybe that they need to kind of like maybe finally show that they can actually put the ball into the back of the net when they create those big chances. And as for Portugal, yes, in many ways they got very lucky in this game, and yes, I don't think this team is going to win the World Cup if they continue to play like that. I mean, Ronaldo right now is just single-handedly carrying this Portugal team. Something that was very similar to the last World Cup when Messi basically single-handedly carried Argentina. And yes, I know you're probably going to say to me, well, Messi was able to get his team to the final. Well, the thing is, the reason why I don't think this Portugal team is going to win the World Cup, and I don't even think they're going to get to the final, is that they're just too rely on Ronaldo. That Argentina team, at least there were a couple of guys on that team that can be a creative player and can score goals for that team besides Messi. This Portugal team, it's just Ronaldo and then just a question mark after that. I mean, they do have good creative player on their team that is besides Ronaldo, but it just feels like some of those guys that is on this team are just not stepping up enough. They are not really putting the weight off of Ronaldo's hand, and until they start showing that they can actually do it and actually kind of do what they did in the Euros, where they don't have to just heavily rely on Ronaldo every single time, I don't think this team is going to get very far into the final, or even came close to getting into the final. And speaking of a team that I don't think they're going to get to a final by the way that they're playing right now, Uruguay is another one. So Uruguay with a 1-0 win against Saudi Arabia, and Luis Suarez, of course, with the only goal of this game. And really, this was probably the only mistake Saudi Arabia made in this whole game. I mean, basically, it was a corner coming in, and the keeper completely missed the ball. And once that ball goes behind him, it just falls right into Luis Suarez. Suarez basically just kind of like tapped it into the back of the net to open his account in this year's World Cup. And really, for Uruguay, the problem for them in this game was almost similar to Portugal. This team, for whatever reason, decided to sit back in this game against Saudi Arabia and not really kind of attack against their opponent. Now, from what I heard from the announcer and when I watched that game, they were talking about how Uruguay was kind of a team that loves to sit back and hit teams on the counterattack and able to have creative player that give the ball to Luis Suarez and also Cavani for them to put the ball into the back of the net. But the problem with that is that you are facing Saudi Arabia here, and if you saw what the Saudis did in the last game, yeah, that was not very good. And to be fair, the Saudis definitely done much better in terms of the defense in this game. They didn't give the ball away carelessly like they did in the last game against Russia, and at times they did create some decent chance to potentially get an equalizer and maybe get maybe another goal to take the lead. But unfortunately, just like Morocco, they don't really have a lot of creative players and don't have a reliable guy where when you give him the ball, he will potentially put the ball into the back of the net every time when he gets into good position. And because of that, Uruguay, of course, gets away with it. They have another 1-0 lead. And if you just look at the first two games, it has not been impressive whatsoever from Uruguay. And in fact, if I have to say who actually moves on the further this between Portugal and Uruguay, I would say Portugal, because at least Portugal has played Spain and they definitely played very well against them and was able to earn a result. Uruguay has been playing two of the weakest teams in this tournament. I mean, they play an Egypt team that didn't have Mohamed Salah. In that game, they almost lost that one. And then in this game against Saudi Arabia, everybody thought that they were going to take it to the Saudis, and seeing what Russia did to the Saudis in the last match, you would think that they would at least score 3 or 4 goals, and Luis Suarez and Edison Cavani was going to have a field day. But instead, they were really quiet in this game. And even though Suarez scored that goal, he wasn't really much of an impact after that goal he scored. So that is something Uruguay's got to figure it out. And when they do play against the big teams, and I think maybe the next game, I wouldn't say the next game would really kind of really show whether or not if Uruguay, once they get into knockout round, able to play against the big boys, because they're playing against Russia. And I know Russia right now is probably the most informed team right now, and the most kind of talk about team, and one of the most dark horse kind of team in this tournament. But still, I really think that could be maybe that one. I don't think that should be a difficult game for them. And if they struggle against Russia, then there's got to be a lot of alarming bells toward Uruguay, and how when they do get into the round of 16, and I know they're going to be either facing Spain or Portugal or one of those teams in Group B, and yeah, that is when the real test will begin. And if they drew against Portugal, something tells me that this is going to be a very boring game, because both of these teams kind of plays in kind of a similar kind of style of play, and that one of those teams is going to have to go forward and try to attack, and that is not the thing that both team does. So we're going to see how that's going to go, if that would actually happen. But for Uruguay, it's a good victory against Saudi Arabia. It's also a good victory for Spain as they beat Iran 1-0. And as you expect, Iran was defending pretty much for the entire first half. Well, I shouldn't say pretty much. They were defending for the first half. Like, Spain had 80% of possession in the first half. Iran basically just completely parked the bus in the first half. And although some people will say that that's not the way, that is kind of a little bit disgraceful of what the Iranians are doing, just park the bus, playing that Jose Mourinho type of football. But you also got to remember, this is what Iran is. This is a team that will always sit back and will just put so many guys behind the box and just ask you to come at them and see if they can break you down. And this Iran defense is just super organized, and I think Spain found out in the first half, because they had a lot of trouble breaking down that Iran defense. Like, they didn't really have any good look whatsoever in the first half to potentially get a 1-0 lead over Iran. And as the game goes, it looked like this was going to be a 0-0 draw, and this is the perfect plan that Iran was going to have in this game. But unfortunately, in the 54th minute, Diego Costa strike again, and this was a very unfortunate goal, because as Costa was dribbling through on goal, there was like 2 Iranian defender with him, and when he was trying to shoot the ball actually got blocked. But when the ball got blocked, it literally ricocheted right back into Costa, and Costa basically just put that into the back of the net. He absolutely know nothing about that ricochet on the second attempt when that defender just blocked that shot. And unfortunately, Iran concede a goal there, and I thought at that point that was probably the end of Iran. I thought if they would go down 1-0 against Spain, this team is going to feel very deflated, and that means that Iran is going to open up, and that Spain is going to really take advantage of that open up defense. And this is where Spain should start putting maybe 2 or 3 goals behind Iran. But instead, that was not the case. In fact, it was Iran that's the team that looked the more dangerous for the last 30 minutes or so. And they actually, what originally thought it was an equalizer for them right in the 64th minute, when I think it was like a over the top ball from a free kick, and then the ball was kind of like pinned in the box, and eventually while the Iranian player able to tap that one into the back of the net. But unfortunately, they look at VAR and they said that that was offside. And as much as I really wish that goal would have stand, because that would just be an amazing upset, and that this will be another story of what has been just a crazy kind of World Cup so far. And unfortunately, when I look on the replay, it was clearly offside. And that goal, of course, didn't stand. And even despite the fact that they had a goal being disallowed, Iran continued to go forward on attack. They really took it to the Spanish defense, and there was even one point where one of the attacker actually nutmegged PK there and made a cross into the back post, which unfortunately the intended target, unfortunately that Iran player that trying to put that ball into the back of the net from the cross just hit it over the net. But that was certainly a very impressive kind of moment. And imagine if that goal went in, social media would have literally blown up if that goal actually went in. But unfortunately, Iran just kind of run out of idea. And really, Spain just, I don't know why in the world did they not kind of go forward and just really take advantage of the open space that Iran was giving them, because this game really opened up once Iran decided that they need to start playing this open form of an attack and that they need to get this equalizer. And Spain just really barely challenged Iran at all ever since they got that goal. So something tells me that, you know, maybe if this is what Iran is, and maybe if Iran can play that kind of football, you know, I understand why they decided to play this kind of negative, boring kind of style of football, because they want to get something out. They want to kind of scratch and grind their way to see, hopefully they can get like a lucky goal to potentially move on into the next round. But you kind of also think that maybe they could have just played that style of football when they were down 1-0 against Spain, where they play a little bit more open, but they were still look very kind of organized at the back, even though they kind of play that open brand of football. So, you know, we never know if that is something that maybe their manager might think about. But with this win for Spain, that means that they are now tied with Portugal with 4 points. And now all of a sudden, heading into the final day, Group B is literally all to play for. I mean, well, unless you're Morocco, which, you know, again, it must be disappointed. It must be really disappointing if you're a Moroccan fan that, you know, your team is now out of the tournament, even though you play very well in this tournament. But, you know, you look at how Group B is and how open it is heading into the final round. There's 3 teams that is vying for 2 spots, and there's only like 1 point separated for these 3 teams. And I know a lot of people will pick Portugal and Spain to move on to the next round, and Iran basically will just get knocked out of the tournament on that final match day. But I'm not quite so sure that you should just automatically say Portugal and Spain will just move on. And especially in that Portugal and Iran match, that is going to be a massive, massive match. And I really think the pressure with Spain winning this, the pressure really is now on Portugal, because we see how Portugal struggle against Morocco in turn, and this is a Morocco defense that is nothing as organized as what this Iran defense is. So if this Portugal team struggle against a Morocco side that is not really as compacted as this Iranian team, what happened when they play Iran? Like, literally, Ronaldo is going to just completely get man-marked again. And I'm pretty sure Iran, they will know that they'll probably not just put 2 guys on Ronaldo, but they'll probably put 4 or 5 guys on him just to make sure that there's no ball get to him, and that they'll just try to get him out of the game and just not really involved in the game. And then you just have to wonder who else is going to break down this Iranian team. And looking what Portugal has done in the first 2 games of the tournament, I am not quite sure if they can able to, if they maybe can find a way to break down this Iran team. Now, the good news for Portugal is that they don't really need a win against Iran. In fact, Iran, the next game is an absolute must-win for them. If they do not win the next game, then that means that they could potentially be out of the World Cup. I mean, here's where it gets really kind of interesting, and there's just so many scenarios that I can mention between which team will move on and which team will not, depend on the resort. And I'm not going to name all of them because I'll spend like over an hour talking about it. But really, if Iran drew their next game, they will be at 4 points. And they better hope that Spain lose to Morocco, but they don't lose to them by a lot. They have to make sure that Spain lose to Morocco, but they have to lose to Morocco by a lot of goals. And I don't think that's probably not going to happen, knowing how Morocco is in terms of goal scoring this tournament. And then if Iran beat Portugal, then yeah, Iran will be at 6 points. And let's say if Spain does beat Morocco, then they will be at 7 points. And then that's when Portugal could be eliminated into this World Cup, because Iran will be up 2 points above them. So, you know, this is a game for Portugal, even though they don't necessarily have to win this game, but they got to make sure they do not lose this game, because if they lose this game, then they are in a big problem, and they could be in trouble, because if Spain, of course, win, and even if Spain loses, then yeah, it gets even more complicated after that. But the bottom line is Portugal, they got to make sure when they play against Iran, they cannot lose that game, because if they lose, they are in big trouble, and they could potentially be eliminated into the next round. And for Iran, it's definitely a must-win game for them. And yeah, it is going to be very interesting heading into the next match day, and heading into, I believe, I don't know when the last match, I think it starts next week when the last match day actually begins. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Group B is going to take place. And yeah, that is pretty much it for this review. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the action today? And yeah, let me know, who do you think is going to be moving on in Group B, and of all these 3 teams that is still in for a chance to move on into the next round, who exactly is going to be that team. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you guys next time.